When you're growing up, when you're a kid growing up, there's always a big sense of wanting to fit in, wanting to be cool, do what the kids that are seen as popular do. And I remember as a child of the 1980s, a teenager of the 1990s, that was always big, whether it was music. When I was in middle school, the cool music was Red Hot Chili Peppers and the Beastie Boys. You want to listen to what the cool kids listen to, watch what they watch, and wear what they wear. So for this segment of Back in the Day on the In My Footsteps podcast, I wanted to dive into some of the old school clothing brands that I remember wearing or wanting to wear or knowing, ooh, if I wear that stuff, I'm going to be cool just like everyone else. Now, granted, all of you out there that are in their 20s or under 20s, these brands, if you go and look them up, you're going to probably say, ugh, what, this was cool back then? But yeah, trends change, fads change. So these clothing brands were the in thing. So let's go back in the day for some old school clothing brands. When we're talking about these brands, specifically from the 1980s into the early 90s, these are the brands that I remember. First, I know that I had Ocean Pacific clothing. It was a surfer brand. They were established in 1972. They kind of go alongside other surfer brand clothing lines like Quicksilver and Billabong. I remember having Quicksilver too, specifically the t-shirts. It's almost like you wanted a shirt or shorts or something that had the logo so that people could see it and be, oh yeah, he's got the Ocean Pacific. Ocean Pacific had the OP logo that was very, not tacky, but the 80s look. You have to see it to understand. The clothing line is still made today, by the way. I remember the t-shirts. A lot of them had horizontal colored stripes with palm trees on them. Specifically, I remember having a pair of what they call board shorts, big, huge-legged board shorts that were bluish, yellowish. Those were the ones, especially in summer, wearing those. It was, oh, look, he's got the OP shorts. Another brand that I remember being really popular, especially in middle school, was Vuarnet. The company started as a sunglasses company. They're a French company. It started in 1960. So they really were just about making sunglasses until they were a sponsor of the 1984 Olympics. And after that, they became a global brand. Their logo, if you're my age, trying to remember what the logo looks like, it was a blue circle with a red V. And they had a lot of the shirts. The one that I remember was just the white shirt with the logo, the blue circle and the red V. You can still get the shirts today, too, on their website, the Vuarnet US site. And they have sweatshirts. Some of the logos have more of those surfer colors, kind of the pastel blue and orange. But yeah, that one's still going strong today. One that I remember specifically for the t-shirts was the No Fear company. So No Fear, they were established in 1989. They also had some energy drinks. I remember the t-shirts having kind of motivational, kind of inspirational slogans on them. They were more like tough love slogans. I remember specifically my friend Barry had a t-shirt. This was in high school. And the slogan on the back said, "Second place is the first loser," which is a great sentiment, but it's also just like, all right, if you don't win, everyone else sucks. And so it's one of those, it's tough love, but it was, I guess, motivational. There was another one that said, "I don't come here to play, I come here to win." Those, if you wore those in school, it was definitely kind of that cool rebelling against the norm kind of shirt. This clothing line could be seen as kind of the extreme sports example of clothing. Not really skater stuff. I always assumed that like kind of the rebelling was seen as skater clothing back in my day, but they're still going strong too. Well, sort of. So they went bankrupt in 2011, and the company was bought by a British sports retailer, the Fraser's Group. So they're actually still available. You can buy No Fear clothing still. Does anyone out there remember LA Gear? LA Gear started in 1983, and interestingly for this podcast, the guy who founded it, Robert Greenberg, was from Boston, and he moved to LA and started the LA Gear Company. And they got really big when Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, the center for the LA Lakers, left his Adidas contract to go and endorse LA Gear. There was a lot of other big celebrity endorsers. I mean, you had Michael Jackson and Paula Abdul. In sports, you had Wayne Gretzky. The sneakers for LA Gear were the most well-known. They had their high tops they called the Regulators. They were like the Reebok Pump, which another one. If you're not familiar with the Reebok Pump or the Regulator, essentially it had a little air pump in it that would kind of tighten the shoes up around your feet. Those were a huge fad in the early 90s. Now, not so much. They also had LA Lights, which were shoes that had light-up heels, and they actually became important. They were like a safety thing. If kids were lost in the woods or something, their light-up shoes, people could actually come and find them. So they became more than just a status symbol of wearing these types of sneakers. And like the others that I mentioned before, LA Gear is still available. They have a website. You can go and get some new and retro clothing and accessories. The one that I remember specifically thinking of it as a skater brand was Airwalks. And they're still around too. But the Airwalks came out in the 1980s. They were a casual sneaker. And I remember having, those were, for me, along with Vans, those were the brands where it wasn't a sneaker, it wasn't a dress shoe, it was a casual. And they were not bland, but think of it as like Skechers today, where they just look like a casual shoe. It's hard to describe, but Airwalks are still around. I had a pair of those in high school and thought I was pretty cool having those. And I actually got another pair. This was less than 10 years ago. I said I wanted to go retro even then when I was in my 30s. I said, I got to get me some Airwalks. All I need now is a flannel shirt and some torn jeans, and I'd be right back to my grunge roots of the 90s. I wanted to include one more, so it's not really a brand, it's more of a trend, especially in the early 90s. So there was a company called Generra, and they had something called Hypercolor shirts. So if you're not familiar with this, Hypercolor was basically, it would be one color, kind of a powdery looking color, whether it's red or blue or whatever. And when it got warm, if you put your warm hand on the shirt, it would leave a handprint that was a different color. So basically heat would change the color of the shirt. And those things were, they were popular for a short time, but they were very popular when they were popular. You can still get Hypercolor shirts. I mean, granted, more than just, going on a website and buying it like eBay and getting someone's old shirt. But Generra was sold in the mid-90s. Did any of you out there that are my age, 40s, did you have any of those clothing brands? Did you wear any? Did you keep any of those? If you go in your closet, do you have a No Fear shirt from 25 years ago? I was curious. I was looking up sayings that used to be on the shirts for research for this segment. And they actually have No Fear shirts for sale. Used ones on eBay. They're going for $50, $60. So, I mean, I don't know if they've aged well, if they're collector's items. I just found it interesting that people are selling their No Fear shirts from the 90s for $60, $70. I don't know. Would you buy an old t-shirt from the 90s or 80s? Maybe not to wear, but to have, like someone else's shirt? I'm not sure about that. There's a little trip back in the day, some old school clothing brands. Let me know if you had any of those brands, shirts, shorts, shoes. If there are any that I missed out, shoot me an email and let me know.